We interrupt that live broadcast of the Life Esidimeni hearings. We'll go back to it shortly, but now a reminder of our breaking news coverage at this hour. The North Gauteng High Court has ordered former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe to pay back part of his 30 million rand pension payout. The court found that Molefe's retirement agreement and reinstatement was indeed unlawful. Now, NCA's senior specialist reporter Karen Morn is standing by for us outside or at the North Gauteng High Court. Karen, thank you so much for joining us. Can you take us through what exactly went down in that court over the last hour or so?
Marcel, I'm just going to read you from this extraordinary judgment, but essentially the court has gone into the area of state capture and said that Brian Molefe's conjecture that he did not actually resign in the wake of the Public Protector's report is simply not true. Mr. Molefe accepted that the allegations against him were so serious that they warranted his resignation in the interest of Eskom and good corporate governance. The allegations are directly relevant to the rationality and legality of his reinstatement to Group Chief Executive Officer. Eskom acted irrationally in failing to consider how his reinstatement could of Eskom and good governance after Mr. Molefe acknowledged that the serious allegations against him in relation to that state capture report were a reason for his resignation. They also addressed this issue. Mr. Molefe, of course, raised this claim that there were no findings against him, that the Public Protector was merely making observations. Mr. Molefe contains that the Public Protector's report contains observations, not binding findings. Of course, that's being made by President Jacob Zuma in terms of a state capture review. He argues that the observations framed by the Public Protector as integrities were intended to be determined by the Judicial Commission of Inquiry. Of course, those terms of reference will be announced today. And he was not given an opportunity to respond to the Public Protector's observations before the report was published. The allegations against Mr. Molefe contained in the Public Protector's report are serious, that they were the reason for his resignation. The allegations are highly relevant to Mr. Molefe's suitability for reinstatement as GCEO. They are a dead weight that he must carry until he is cleared. The court unanimously saying Brian Molefe resigned. His resignation, he did in fact, his claims that he did not resign are simply not true. This pension, he was never entitled to that money. He must pay it back within 10 days. And that this claim of early retirement that he subsequently made after publicly resigning was false and deceitful, and essentially that he lied. Now, we spoke to his lawyer earlier, just subsequent to the judgment, and he didn't really want to deal with this allegation that, the court's finding that, in fact, Brian Molefe had lied about that early retirement issue, saying that Brian Molefe still wanted to serve the South African public. He still wanted to be part of serving the state. He said, as far as he understood it, Brian Molefe was currently serving as a reservist in the SNDF, but he still wanted the chance to be part of the South African government landscape. But of course, this court describing those allegations or those findings or observations, as he put it, made in the Public Protector's report as a dead weight that he must carry until he is cleared. And it was those allegations that are at the heart of the court saying to reinstate this man is simply irrational. Eskom could not put him back into the position given the serious kind of allegations that he faces.
Now, Karen, where does this leave Brian Molefe now? I mean, the story has unfolded in a rather extraordinary manner. At some stage, he had resigned. At another stage, he was merely seconded to Parliament. Then there was early retirement, which we now know was too early, and he said that that was a mistake. And all of this taking place while other tainted executives of Eskom are in the firing line at Parliament. Where does that leave Mr. Molefe now?
Well, the court has made it very, very clear that, this conjecture that we've heard from a number of other people, including President Jacob Zuma himself in his state capture review, that the Public Protector's report, was simply observations, that there's no serious or damning findings made against him, has been completely undermined by this judgment. It is going to send quite seismic waves throughout the landscape, political and legal, as it goes ahead. And the result, the order that the court granted, was the decision taken by the board of Eskom in November 2016 to accept Mr. Molefe's early retirement proposal is reviewed and set aside. The decision made by the minister to appoint and reinstate Mr. Molefe to the position of Group Chief Executive at Eskom is reviewed and set aside. It is declared that any payment or sum of money received by Mr. Molefe under any purported pension agreement between him and Eskom is invalid, and Mr. Molefe is ordered to repay such amounts within 10 days of this order. Mr. Molefe is ordered to pay the costs, including the cost of 2 counsel where employed. So in addition to the 11 million, which is the amount that he got out of that pension payout, he's going to have to pay in the region of 2 million rand in legal costs. His lawyer is saying that, he still needs to consult with Brian Molefe. But as Solidarity has said in this court, Brian Molefe losing 6 love in terms of all the arguments that he tried to make. Remember, when he came to this litigation, Marcel, he wanted reinstatement. He wanted to be back in Eskom. His lawyer is saying to us that, in fact, he did some good things at Eskom. But this court, again, saying that until there is proper ventilation of these very, very, very serious state capture allegations against Brian Molefe, and one would argue into the future, all the other Eskom executives implicated in this so-called state capture, he is going to face serious problems in terms of actually going back into the public life that he says he wants to be part of. And of course, Solidarity saying that they have received notification from the Hawks that there is a case open, that Brian Molefe's pension payout, which they contend was a consequence of fraud, is being investigated, that there is a criminal case underway, and that within the next 2 weeks they will be meeting with the Hawks over this issue. So not only in the region of about 12 million rand that Brian Molefe now has to pay back, but the very real possibility that, given the fact that this court has found that there was manifest dishonesty in this kind of claim of early retirement, he faces the very real possibility of criminal action as well.
That's our senior specialist reporter, Karen Morn, reporting to us live from the North Gauteng High Court on that breaking news story around Brian Molefe. We'll have more news after this break.